The conversations on Off the Record podcast are strictly social. They should not be reported on as facts or as news stories. They're simply perspectives of persons who are sharing their experiences as they remember it. These are their stories. Welcome to Off the Record, where we speak to your public figures in St. Vincent, SVG, and even abroad. And today we have with us, say, entrepreneur, journalist, executive editor, public figure in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Everybody knows Kenton Chance. So, hey, Kenton.
Did you say public figure?
Public figure, yes.
Or you mean a figure who's in the public's eye?
What's the difference?
I don't know. Well, I tend to think I'm in the public's eye, but not a public figure.
But you don't know what's the difference?
Well, that's the way I look at it. I can't give you a definition per se, but that's the way I look at it. But thanks. It's great to be here. And I want to commend you on this initiative. It's always good to see people who are trained at a certain level put their training into practice.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And well, I don't know if I say this a lot, like on the record, because I believe that I said this on radio once. But you're actually one of the people, and you know it too, that shaped me professionally. Although you're very humble about it, you did show me a lot of things, especially in the beginning when you came in rough and you came in with your your cutlass. What you call it again, boy? The sharpener, and you just chisel.
Instagram, not Instagram, LinkedIn post. I'm humbled to hear that you said that I'm humble. most people tend to think that I'm one of the most arrogant people that they meet, but to the extent that I might have made a contribution and you recognize it, I'm happy that I was able to make a contribution.
Definitely. Yeah. Now, a lot of people, they know the name Kenton Chance and they know to associate the name with iWitness News, but I don't think a lot of people know your story. So where did you begin in journalism or even writing?
Where did I begin in writing? The first piece of quote unquote impressive writing I can remember doing was when I was in grade 6. They say that the best writers are readers.
Mm-hmm.
And I had always had a penchant for reading. And I think language was always something that I was pretty good at. I remember in when I was in grade 6, at the time we used to call it junior 5, we had to write an article about a good thing turned sour.
Hey, what school is this?
Clear Valley Government School.
Okay.
And which interestingly produced two prominent people in the media. My colleague Nadia Slater, she and I, we were in the same class, was the deputy director.
That is API?
Yep, of the API, acting director of API. And we had to write an article on a good thing turned sour. And most of the people write something about, they cooking something, just leave literally sour, and then, but in terms of journalism per se, my journalism career began in 2002 when I was at the community college. I graduated grammar school in 1997 and went to community college in 2001. It had always been my dream to become a teacher.
Really?
I had always, and even up to 2012 when I came back to St. Vincent, I toyed with the idea of becoming a teacher. In fact, I remember asking a very prominent educator about how much somebody with a master's degree is paid in teaching. He said, "Oh, you don't get paid for a master's degree." So I just went straight back.
But I don't know. I feel like I could see it because I have sent you press releases and I've sent you articles, and then you send back, yeah, if I would do this next time. It's very teacher like. Like, what you do? I don't think a lot of people would appreciate something like that. That's probably why they say that you're arrogant. I don't see it. I like to learn from persons who know more than I do.
But the thing is, I mean, if you have a particular attitude towards learning, then you would appreciate the feedback from other people. I learn a lot from people all the time.
Yeah.
Like sometimes if I read a story and there's a typo or a grammatical error and then somebody points it out, I'm not offended at all. Or, to give you an example, right? This week there was a a story of a boy who was found dead,
Mm-hmm.
hanging by the neck.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote an article, and I said the boy was in the article. I said the boy was found hanging from the neck. And a colleague of mine called me, and he said, "Is it?" Well, not a colleague, a friend. He called me and he said, "Was he found hanging from the neck or by the neck?" So I said, let me give it some thought, because when I wrote that article, I was really tired. And then I said, I just set it in my mind. He was found hanging by the neck from a ceiling. I said, "Oh, you're correct." So I have no objections to errors in my work being pointed out. There's a really good somebody who's really good at English language who did a lot of proofreading for Eyewitness News. Not so much now, and I've learned quite a bit from them. And I'm interested in language. I'm somewhat of a purist, so I don't believe in mixing British and American English. So that's why I keep telling people, if you spell color COLOUR, then it's not math, it's maths.
Mm-hmm.
Because math is American English, maths is British English, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so
But so you started with writing about something sweet that turned sour, and then you went to secondary school. You continued with the love. You wanted to teach. How did you then get introduced to journalism?
Well, when I was at community college, Searchlight newspaper, they were doing a media training in basic journalism. It was sponsored by the U.S. Embassy, and the program was actually delivered by a gentleman, Charles Harding, late. And I registered among other people at the college, and we did this program. Some people who were in the media for a long time, they also enrolled in this program. And then sometime after, the Vincentian newspaper, which at the time was a broadsheet, it was still black and white, they were transitioning to color, and they wanted to produce a youth magazine. And I think somehow they found out about this cadre of students at community college who were trained in journalism. And at the school, we had a vote about who should become the editor, and I was selected to become the editor. And it's really funny because I put in quite a long hours at the Vincentian newspaper, just to ensure that this Young Vincentian magazine was published. And after I graduated from community college, I was offered a job at the Vincentian, a full-time job without having to apply or anything like that. And I worked there for 3 years. And then after working there for 3 years full-time, I went off to Taiwan to study.
Okay, so in community college, you were already volunteering at the Vincentian?
Yes, I was the editor of the Young Vincentian magazine.
So how did that happen?
Well, it's just that the Vincentian was revamping, and they were publishing a series of magazines. One was called Grenadine Beat. I think there was a business section, there was a youth section. So I became the editor of the youth magazine, and a lot of the content was produced by the students, my classmates, mainly literature students.
Oh, okay. So it was. Oh, I'm forgetting the word for that. But when a university or a college has
It was
relations with a business.
Well, I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't really ad hoc, but it wasn't a really formal arrangement. And I think I'm a kind of person, right? If I'm involved in something, I give it my all.
Okay.
So I spent quite a lot of long hours at the Vincentian, just trying to ensure. I had other reasons to be there too, because the woman who I'm married to now was working there also.
They say.
But we had met before she was working there.
They say friends will carry you, but they don't bring you back.
But
a woman will push you in the direction of your career.
Yeah. And interestingly, we ended up working also at such a newspaper together. Yeah, so we worked at two newspapers together.
So then you went to study in Taiwan. Why Taiwan?
The scholarship, primarily the scholarship. But I would tell you, in 2000 I went to Taiwan in 2006. But in 2005, I went to Taiwan to visit. And I was there for like 3 weeks. And at that time, I had a scholarship to study in Cuba. But one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Cuba is because I had studied Spanish at A level. And I wanted to sort of like perfect my Spanish. So I wanted to go to Cuba. but I also wanted to study communications. And I remember one person at a particular newspaper, they sort of said, well, why do you want to go to Cuba to study communications of all things? And they sort of like dissuaded me. But that wasn't the reason why I did not go to Cuba. I actually forfeited the Cuba scholarship because when I went to Taiwan, I decided that Taiwan was the place that I wanted to study. So I took a huge risk and forfeit the Cuba scholarship and applied the following year to go to Taiwan.
So you went to Taiwan, part of a delegation?
No, I had gone there for a media training course. It was for 3 weeks, but it was organized by the Taiwan government. And I was nominated by the Taiwan embassy here in Kingston.
Okay, how did that happen?
Well, they used to do a lot of those courses. I think they still do them. But most of those that they do now, especially the media, are shorter. But this one was like for 21 days.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't want to misquote anyone, but I remember a politician, hearing a politician had said, St. Vincent doesn't really have journalists, but I know that there are a lot of people here media trained. So I guess the question is, how did the Taiwan embassy choose you to nominate out of the different media houses?
Well, I wasn't the first to have gone. I had a colleague, who had gone before, and like every year they would look at people's work, I presume. And the Taiwan embassy is not the only embassy that has nominated me. I've been nominated by the embassy of Israel, Japan, other countries. I've gone to a few fellowships to different countries on different programs.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll most definitely get to that. But right now, so you went to Taiwan, you're nominated, went to Taiwan, you decided, hey, I'm going to take this risk.
Yeah.
I want to go to Cuba, I'm going to go to Taiwan. So what was that study experience like?
In Taiwan, I had a wonderful experience in Taiwan.
Yeah, but if I remember, since that was 2006,
I went there 2006.
2006.
To
You would have
2012.
been 5 people?
My year, it was 5 of us. Yeah, it was. I think it was about 5 of us.
Yeah. So what was that experience like?
Well, I heard recently, and not meaning to be controversial, that there's this group Vita in Taiwan that was celebrating its
Vincentian,
20th anniversary. It's not 20 years yet since I went to Taiwan, and I can tell you that when I went there, that group did not exist. It was our Taiwan mommy, Peggy Carr, and enough love and respect
Shout out Peggy.
to Peggy. Peggy is just such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful soul.
Peggy's
So,
an amazing person.
It was Peggy and the students who were there before, who like took us into their apartments, take us to register for our residency cards and university and all of that. So we didn't have, well, the first thing, we didn't have as many people, and we didn't have like a structure per se. Everything was informal, but it worked really, really. We just looked out for each other, and that was really good.
So you did 1 year Mandarin, and then
Yeah, I did 1 year of Mandarin Chinese at I'm almost saying the names in Chinese. Taiwan Normal University Mandarin Training Center, MTC. I was a Taiwan Shufan Dashui.
Shufan Dashui.
Yeah. So I did 1 year of Mandarin Chinese, which was a really, really great year because that year I really immersed myself into the Taiwan culture, traveled around Taiwan quite a lot, made quite a few Taiwanese friends. Just really got to know Taiwan, the dragon boating and all of that. And the following year, I went to Mingchuan University, where I studied. My program was totally in English, but I had, based on what people say, a solid base in Mandarin Chinese. So I was able to function pretty well in the school population.
Okay. Because I remember when I went to Taiwan, I went to the Taoyuan campus
of Mingchuan.
And there is still a banner, and your face is on the banner. So I guess you made quite the impact.
Well, academically, I did for sure because I finished my program, my 2 programs at the top of the program In fact, I did what it was called 4+1.
Mhm.
So in Taiwan, you go to university and it's 4 years, and generally everybody going together and everybody leave together. So at the end of my sophomore year, I went to my dean and I said, well, I can't see why I have to spend 2 more years here. I need 121 credits to graduate. And I'm already at 96 or 98 or something like that, you know. Oh, let me apply for early graduation. She said, look, in Chinese society, these things only exist in principle. Nobody does them. But she said, you know what? There's a program called 4+1. The criteria are really stringent. But once you meet them, you can begin doing a master's in the final year, in your 4th year. You had to maintain an 85% average for the 6 semesters for which would be your junior year. You also had to have a conduct grade. A conduct grade has to do with your attendance and your participation and all of these things of 85% for each of those semesters. And there were some other things. And I met all of them and I started my master's program in my final year. So in my 4th year of university, I was completing my bachelor's degree and also working on my master's degree at the same time.
Okay, and your bachelor's degree is in?
Journalism and mass communication.
And the master?
International affairs. Well, focusing on, well, it's politics, global governance.
Big surprise there. Big surprise there. And from there, you return home.
Yes, I graduated in June, and I think before the end of June, in July, early July, I was back in St. Vincent.
Okay. And then, I don't know at which point, and I guess you'll tell me now, you started what is now known as iWitness News.
So iWitness News was started in 2009, which was my junior year. That's when we were doing internet journalism, and we had to run a blog. And it was just for a semester, 4 months. And what we had to do was what you call repurpose a story. So you take a story and you sort of rewrite it and you put all of the credits at the end. But then I said to myself, I practiced journalism for 3 years. I don't need to repurpose stories. And our international college, which was part of a larger university, where a lot of the students didn't necessarily speak Mandarin Chinese or didn't speak it at a level where they could, so there were a lot of issues, cultural issues, language issues, and whatever have you. So I began writing about things in the university to help to make it, life better for the students there.
So like a student paper type.
Well, I started to focus on student type articles about things happening in the university for this blog. And then coincidentally, in 2009, after the spring semester was done and I came home in the summer, we were having our constitutional reform campaign and all of that. So when I went back to Taiwan, I just continued to follow that and to write stories about it. And I began by harvesting emails and emailing the stories to people, sort of like spamming them.
Yeah, that reminds me of Kevin Hart. Person said Kevin Hart was the only comedian at his time who would go into the crowd in his early shows and take people's emails. And basically, he started email.
Well, that's the thing. And I mean, Facebook was wrong, but it wasn't half as popular as it is now. I remember, like, trying to convincing one of my friends, a very close friend, very skeptical guy, a brilliant mind, Jamali, because he's just such a wonderful person. I just mentioned his name. Jamali is just such a talented person, really great communicator, wonderful person. And I remember trying to convince him to join Facebook, tell him why I think Facebook was such a good thing. So what I did in the earlier stages, I would get people's emails and just email the stories to them. Got to the point where Google would block you, say, you sent 500 for today. So, and just then I began to encourage people to subscribe. People began subscribing. I always remember, either the 3rd or 4th subscriber to iWitness News was a very prominent politician at the time.
Okay.
So, people would be in public saying one thing or give you the impression they don't read iWitness News. But when you look in the list there, and iWitness just grew. The following year was the election, 2010 elections. And I remember I wrote about some of the most controversial things that, you know, I don't want to say people didn't want to touch, but for instance, there was this big controversy about the election date. Mr. Adamus, who was the opposition leader at the time, the Saturday night, he had said what he claimed would be the election date. And then he said, if another date is given, it's because the prime minister changed it. And the prime minister, being the dramatist that he is, he went and he said he called his bluff and he brought out a calendar and he wrote some dates on there. And Oris took a picture and he posted it on Facebook, among other pictures that he took of the event. And I used that picture in one of my articles. And I remember somebody messaging me and say, hey, zoom in this picture and look at that date that the prime minister wrote. So I asked Oris, who I knew, if he could send me the original image, which he did. And when I zoomed in, I saw this particular date. And then the following day, Elson Crick, who was at the time the communications consultant in the office of the prime minister, he sent the script of the prime minister's speech with a particular date in there. So there was this big controversy about the election date and whether the prime minister had changed the date because of what Mr. Yusa said. And I think that story, it flew. I remember Searchlight asked my permission to publish that story, and they published a few other stories from my coverage of the election. So, you know, Eyewitness News just grew from strength to strength. I always remember publishing this story about, I was in Taiwan and I wrote a story saying that Kingston had shut down and was preparing for the impact of Hurricane Thomas. And there's this particular woman whose name I would not call. She messaged, so who said that Kingston is this and that? And, you know, the next thing you know, Hurricane Thomas had came and devastated the island and all of that. And, you know, so I mean, I would say I'm really proud of what Eyewitness News has become. But I know all of the hard work that I put in to make Eyewitness News what it is today. It was a lot of hard work.
And earlier you said that was the controversial story, the dates. But since then, I feel like you wear that tag, the writer of controversial articles, Mr. the Grenadines.
Ari, as a trained communicator, you know that controversy is a news element. I don't know if I write controversial stories. I just try to make my stories interesting. If I'm going to sit for 45 minutes and write a story, I want people to read it. So it must be an interesting story.
I had this conversation, me, the cameraman, and someone, was it management or marketing they're in? And they had mentioned, oh, the way Eyewitness use write story, it's sensationalized. And I'm like, I think that people often forget that these media houses are businesses.
Yep.
And the minute that your story is misleading or untrue is when you're failing as a journalist.
Exactly. You lose credibility.
Exactly. So as long as it remains truthful, where are you going wrong?
I don't know. I mean, who wants to sit and write a boring story? Nobody wants to read a boring story. I used to think, right, at one point, that writing headlines was my greatest weakness as a journalist. Writing headlines, it was one of my greatest weakness. Some people tell me I've improved with time, while other people complain about my headlines. But in internet journalism, your headline is the story. If you don't have that headline that captures people's attention, like when Jacket Skimel Dunbar was convicted of murder, I think I wrote something about hitman for hire for like $1,500. Now, everybody knew that Skimel Dunbar was convicted of murder. They didn't have to wait on Eyewitness News to tell that, but how many people knew that he had actually agreed to kill someone for $1,500?
I remember that article was quite detailed, more detailed than the others that I read.
Yeah, well, there's some court stories that call for that. Yeah.
That's very, 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 very true. And I think most recently, the quote unquote, and I have to say quote unquote, I'm sorry, I'm in communications. There's certain things that I see And I remember I posted on Facebook and I said, there's just some things that I not get to. Some arguments that I'm never going to have. You posted Shafika Maloney from homeless to Olympic finalist. Almost said champion and I had to remember, but she did an amazing job.
She did a wonderful job.
Amazing job.
Yep.
And persons were like, the timing of this is disgusting. Why would you say that? And Shafika herself reposted an article, and I don't remember if it was BBC or ESPN. Or
was several media.
It was several media houses for sure, because I remember reading them. That's why I can't remember who she reposted. The same thing. And that is what it took for people to be.
But Ari, as a journalist yourself, right? I mean, everybody likes rags to riches story. Like I did a training, and this is one of the things I do. I'm almost always in some training.
that I know.
And there was a Haitian videographer. The training was on video news, and he says the best video news story you can get. Someone is trying to do something, but it is hard. Or someone has done something, but it was hard. If Shafika was the quote unquote regular US athlete who had all of the money that she needed, all of the support that she needed, and she just, she's just naturally talented and she had all of the supplements, her story would not be as inspiring. So to take away the part that she was homeless is to take away from her story.
I look at this, right, as somebody in communications. And I look at it from journalist aspect and marketing aspect, the advertising aspect, the public relations aspect. And what all of them, and what all of them have in common is this needs to sell. The story, if it is that she never went on to Sportsmax, people would not be talking. How many athletes complain, we're not getting funded. This is not happening for us. The Ministry of Sports need to do better. Sports and culture need to do better. The minister athletes have been complaining for years. Shafika went on to a regionally and internationally recognized media platform and explained just how serious it got for her. And that is when people started paying attention. That is when you started hearing from the government. That is when you started hearing from businesses.
But the irony is, some people would say that in doing so, she's making the country look bad. But I think when people do that, their focus is in the wrong place.
Yes.
How about saying that she's calling attention to her plight?
Exactly.
And if she did not call attention to her plight, who knows? She might have never ended up. And I mean, kudos to all the people, the entities, the individuals who stepped up and assisted her after that became public. But that's why I always say to people, like people would call me and say, well, some people call me, right? The first thing, their number is withheld. The number is withheld. But the first thing they say, I don't want my name called. So I say, well, even if I want to call your name, I can't call your name because I have no idea who you are. But they're talking about something that affects them personally. But they don't want their name to be called. But Kenton Chance is supposed to put out this story about this unnamed person who's having this problem with some other named person, and they want it to be it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. If something is affecting you enough, stand up and speak up.
It reminds me of an interview I had with the opposition leader. And I asked him, who are the young people that are in the New Democratic Party, the NDP? And he said, well, he would say, but he doesn't want them to be victimized. And that was a very strange answer to me. How is it that I can be a part of a party which would need me promoting the party, but I cannot say because I would be victimized?
Well, the way I look at it, right? I think in politics in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there are, excuse me, a lot of young people who want to get involved in politics, but they want to get into it in the way that a grave digger does. Now they say grave digging is the only profession or the only skill where you start from the top. You want to get in from the top. They don't want to work hard and build themselves up. And I mean, to a certain extent, you see it happening in journalism where every so often a new outfit pops up. There's nobody there with any training or experience in journalism, but they present themselves as a doyen of the profession and want to lecture on what is and what is not and all of that. So these people, they want to get into politics, but some of them, they only get in if they know that their party is going to win. And otherwise than that, they're not getting in.
As we were talking, I remembered when we were at that training session a few months ago, and there was a conversation being had on a platform with two journalists. And I remember the two of us were in the comments and we were saying, okay, this is not so, this is how it should be. And I think there were other journalists as well saying, no, that's not how that is. And I remember someone called, I won't say who, somebody I respect, and they called me and they said, what is it about journalists who go to Taiwan? I feel like they know everything. I feel they know more than everybody else. I really do feel like journalism is the only profession where, or communications is the only profession where persons always want to tell you what you studied isn't right.
Well, look at this, right? Everybody knows what journalism is until they have to write a news story. Or ask them to write a press release. They're always in the comment section. And by the way, I believe very strongly in freedom of expression. So I'm not saying people shouldn't comment. I think most people, I don't delete comments unless they're defamatory or they're insightful. And, I just believe that people should talk. And if you see some of the comments that I approve about myself, I talk. But the thing is, you must be able to back up your mouth with something. So if something happens and I say, well, give me a 50-word news story on that, you should be able to present something. But like you rightly said, everybody knows what journalism is in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, except the journalists. And I am not saying by any stretch of the imagination that one has to go to a university to become a journalist. There's some very distinguished journalists in St. Vincent who've never graced the hall of a university. But you have to know what journalism is. You have to know what it is. I often use the hyperbole and say that for some people, if journalism meet them in the street and hit them a hard slap, they would not be able to identify it to the police.
Who hit them?
Yeah, they will not be able to identify it to the police.
What do you think is the most controversial moment you've had in or out of St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
Controversial? I really don't know.
Okay, let's try memorable.
Boy.
Professionally.
Memorable. In a positive way or a negative way?
Whichever way comes to your mind first. Naturally, I feel like as humans, we remember negative.
Well, but as a communication, I remember, right? We were in our politics class. We were analyzing the 2008. Was it? No, I think it's cross-cultural communication or something, which also drives home the point that a lot of people think that when you go to journalism school, you just study how to write a news story, which nothing could be further from the truth. They study about economics, politics, statistics, a lot of stuff.
Geopolitics, digital, social, anyways.
So the professor at the time was saying that the lady who delivered, I don't know if it was Maya Angelou, delivered the poem at Barack Obama's inauguration. And she was saying, in 2 years' time, nobody remember what she said, but they remember her hat. So, and there's a theory that when you meet somebody, you remember something positive, something negative, and a third thing that I can't remember. But I would say one of the worst moments that I've had in journalism, and I will be frank, is something that made me shed at the time, literal tears. It was I had gotten some information about something, and I took the source as being a credible source. And I want you to listen carefully to how I'm saying it. I took the source as being a credible source, and I published the information. And I was unable to prove that the information that I was given was true. I was unable to prove that it was true. It was a really low moment for me. I mean, I struggled through it. A lot of people had a lot of things to say. People talked about it for years and whatever. I man up. These things happen, and I just push through it, and I learned my lessons from it, and I've moved on.
Okay.
But that's one of the most memorable things to me. I've had a lot of very positive moments in my career as a journalist. I've traveled pretty widely as a journalist, interacted with a lot of people, seen a lot of really interesting things. But that's one of the things that I remember. Maybe people will think I focus on the negative. So if you think I focus on the negative, even in my personal career,
I thought you were going to say the negative would be the story where you weren't able to prove that it is true, and the positive would have been the first time that you went to Africa.
well, yeah, that was a very positive experience. I mean, the first time I went to Africa was in 2016, and I landed in Senegal. And I don't know if it was emotions or something spiritual, but I felt something.
Mm-hmm.
I literally felt something as if this is where I belong. There was some sort of connection when I landed there in Senegal. My first time ever in Africa. I've been back to Africa about 4 or 5 times since, but that first time when I went to Africa and I landed in Senegal, it was, I had a real sort of experience. It's somewhat, excuse me, it's somewhat difficult to put into words, but it was a really, really deep, profound experience that I had when I visited Senegal.
So I usually try to avoid political conversations because I know how it is, especially when
You're a journalist.
When you're in a two-party government society. But I feel like you challenge the prime minister a lot. And how does that usually feel for you in the moment, or things like that?
I don't think I challenge the prime minister. I mean, as far as I know, the prime minister and I have a pretty good, respectful relationship.
Mm-hmm.
The prime minister called me on this Friday, yes, on Thursday morning, to tell me about an error that I had in one of my stories. The prime minister called me and to tell me that. This is my reading of the prime minister, right? The prime minister, I think, respects professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
The prime minister is a quote unquote political animal. I would say that he is a politician through and through.
Mm-hmm.
The prime minister would like, I think, every journalist in St. Vincent to be supportive of him and to use their journalism to show that support. That's my view. He could disagree with that, but that is my reading of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been covering him for 20 years. I've been interacting with him. Most of our well, I would say all of our interactions have been respectful, although some of them might have been intense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's ever been an instance, or I can't think of anywhere the prime minister has disrespected me or I have disrespected.
Mm-hmm.
I remember once the prime minister and I had a conversation on the phone, and my wife mouthed at me and said, "Well, who is that?" I said, "The prime minister," and she was a little shocked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was intense, but I don't think it was disrespectful. So I tell people, right, as a journalist, I have access to people that John Public or Jane Public does not. It is my duty when I have that access to think, if John Public or if Jane Public was sitting here, what would he or she want to know? What would he or she have asked? And in that way, I am a servant of the people. I'm not there as a journalist in any self-fulfilling way. a lot of the things that I ask about, I have no personal interest in them. I'm asking them on behalf of the public. And if you approach your role as a journalist in that way, then you will be serving the society. I will tell you, Ari, I'm not going to pretend. A lot of people believe I'm an NDP man. But I would tell people, if the NDP were to win the next general elections or enter government, a lot of the people who are praising me now would treat me in the same way. Well, let me rephrase that. For as long as I remain a journalist, a lot of the people who are supporters of the NDP now and who hold me in high regard, they would treat me the same way that some supporters of the ULP treat me. Because I can tell you and them now that I will not change. For as long as I remain in this profession as a journalist, I will be true to my training. I will be true to the ethics and the tenets of journalism. I could do public relations very well. I've gone even to Paris to do public relations for a European Union agency and paid handsomely for it. But in St. Vincent, I'm a journalist. And once I'm a journalist, I will practice journalism.
Listen, I've said it, I've said it over and over and over again. When I am paid as a journalist, I will produce work as a journalist.
Exactly.
I'm paid as PR. I will provide work, present work, publish work as PR. And there's a distinct difference, and you will know the difference.
Yep.
It is not, and this is the question that I have now. Do you believe that a journalist can be supportive of something very strongly and it not be reflected in their work?
Of course. A lot of things that I support, I don't think they come out in my work. I mean, I think most people know that I'm a Christian. How many people see me right in the street and say how great God is?
Fair assessment.
I believe I love animals a lot. I believe strongly in animal welfare. I mean, the way I look at it, right? It is not the role of a journalist to use his profession to advance causes that he or she might be personally interested in. If there's something that is a legitimate story, you publish it as a news story. Not because I like the environment, I must focus on the environment, or no, I have to focus on the thing. The news criteria are there. And once this thing meets news criteria, right? Like for instance, I went to visit the turtle sanctuary in March. And the animal lover in me, I was really disturbed. I went there with my brother and my sister-in-law who were visiting from the UK, and my wife. And when I saw what was going on there with the turtles, I was very disturbed. And I chose to write a commentary rather than a news story because I wanted to say what I wanted to say. And at the end of it, I signed it Kenton Chance, and at the end, it said the views expressed therein are those of the writer. If I were writing a news story, I would go and interview this, interview that, ask them, what do you think about this, about the turtles? I didn't want to do that. I wanted to write my opinion. And there's nothing wrong with journalists having an opinion and expressing it. Just don't express it in the news.
Did you see my opinion piece from Miss SVG last year?
Yeah, I read it. About the
yes,
about
and
Arena Foy and her experience. Yes,
and you know, someone said, "Oh, what kind of news story is that?" There's nothing.
It's not a news story. It's a commentary.
It's my opinion on something I observed. If I wanted it to be a news story, it would be a full interview with members of the beauty committee, with the pageant persons who allege that she did XYZ. It would be that.
Yep.
Was my opinion based on things that I've seen that I commented on, and that's a huge difference.
But at the same time, I am very skeptical about expressing my opinions on something. Simply because it's a small society. I'm editing a publication, and I don't want people to confuse my personal opinion with a news story that I write. So it's not very often that I I express opinions, and I try not to write commentaries on iWitness News. If I have an opinion to express, generally I would express it elsewhere, maybe on the radio or on Facebook or something. But just to try to keep that separation.
So I think by now a lot of people know Kenton Chance, executive editor iWitness News, but I don't think a lot of people know Kenton Chance as a person. So,
and that's not by accident.
well, we're off the record. How would you describe yourself as a person?
There's some people who think I'm the most arrogant person. I'm stiff, robotic. And there are other people who say I take nothing seriously. Like my family would tell you that I take nothing seriously. I mean, as a journalist, I have a pretty serious disposition. I take my work very seriously. But as an individual, I'm very easygoing. I'm not. I like peace and quiet. I mean, in my house, you don't ever hear phones ringing. You don't hear notifications. I really love peace and quiet. I don't like crowds as an individual. I like nature. I like the outdoors. I I would enjoy going to the beach and just sitting and reading a book or listening to the waves. I like to watch documentaries about the natural world. I love history a lot. It's one of the things that I regret not studying history in secondary school. I studied for 3 years, but
I studied in secondary school. I didn't study in college. That's my regret.
yeah, I studied it only for 3 years in grammar school. And what really deterred me is when I can remember reading about Boston Tea Party and Montesino and Las Casas, but I never read anything about Chateaubriand.
Same here.
So that really turned me off, and I sort of really regret not studying history. But thankfully, because of technology and all of that, you can go on YouTube and watch a lot of stuff. So, I mean, as an individual, I'm probably a very boring person, but it's just my style. That's why I am.
Yeah. And I started here today, and I said that you're a very humble person, and it shows. Yeah, and I'm sure you won't have a problem with me giving this story, but in 2016, we met each other 2015, I believe.
I can't remember the year,
but I remember. And we went on a few assignments, and you were guiding me in a lot of ways. And I remember we were going to cover that. I don't remember what we were going to cover, but we were together. We were in your car.
Was it the murder in Lomans?
It was a murder.
Yeah.
We were on our way to cover. No, not that. Not the day in the mountains. We were on our way to cover murder. For sure. Or we were on our way back, and you got a call from the embassy.
Oh.
And they asked you, who would you recommend that they send to cover the inauguration of Taiwan? And you said, there's a very young and capable journalist at Searchlight called Arisha, and you want him, or you suggest that he goes to Taiwan. I said, okay, there's this person and we have someone else in mind as well. And you said, fine, well, that's my opinion. And later I got a call, and it was the embassy saying, we've selected you to cover the inauguration of the new president, Tsai Ing-wen. And that in itself has shaped a lot. It's a small gesture, but it shaped a lot. And I will always say, Kenton Chance, Life Compton, Claire Keyser are the reason why I am in communications today. And I always want to say publicly that I appreciate that deeply. And I've never once heard you say, do you know that I did this for art? Not once.
But why should I do that?
Will you be surprised with the way people are?
Ari, let me tell you an experience. In 2013, after I was fired from Searchlight, I did a consultancy at SVG BC. It involved editing the news because the editor was on vacation, and writing a report, making suggestions about certain things. And I remember the first day I went there, I mean, because I had been critical of SVG TV. Everybody knows I'm critical of media as I'm critical of everything else. And the first day I went, I had a meeting.
Mhm.
And I said to the folks, I said, look, I know that you have your opinion of me. I have mine of you. But I said, outside, I'm not part of this team. But inside here, I am part of this team.
Mhm.
And you know, one of the people who were there, he told me that he had already set aside some special mother this year for me. Because he thought that I was this particular person. And today, he and I are like best of friends.
Mhm.
Best of friends. So, I mean, I might be critical of people, but I don't have anything personal against people. I mean, I'm a passionate person. I believe strongly in my profession. I defend it jealously. But in terms of being personally opposed to people, no, it's not my style. I'm not saying that I'm always the most polished. You know, sometimes I don't draw on my training in politics and diplomacy and all of that. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes not so much. But I mean, what benefit is it to just, you know?
I'm about to say, listen. Kenton Chance personal Facebook page is a very hilarious page to visit.
Well, I tell people sometimes, don't take yourself too seriously. Nobody else does.
I know you have two beefs. I won't call them beefs, but I call them beefs. One with superior journalism and AI journalism. You want to talk about that?
And that superior journalism thing is just absolutely ridiculous. And I really hope that my schoolmate Nadia Slater at the Agency for Public Information would get a staff and whoever is involved in pushing that superior journalism nonsense to stop it. Because the API uses a hashtag superior journalism.
Mhm.
So their journalism is head and shoulder above everybody else. As arrogant as Kenton Chance is, allegedly, I don't ever say my journalism is superior to anybody else. But, and I've said it elsewhere publicly, that the Agency for Public Information, their role, at least my understanding of them, is to partner with private media and so that they can get government information into, you know, private media, into news. I remember when I was at the Vincentian, there was once the API sent a press release. The press release was so detailed and so well written that the only thing you had to change was style, because you know they have certain style and private media has certain style. No, everything has just gone in another direction. Yeah, I appreciate that things in the media have changed, you know, format have changed and all of that. But the aims and objectives, they have not changed. About the AI journalism, there is an entity in St. Vincent that would take stuff published elsewhere, put it in artificial intelligence, rewrite it, and then publish it. The thing was so ludicrous that there's a media agency that sends out that news stories. And as you know, as a media agency works, they produce news and you buy the story from them, you publish them. The stories produced by professionals, sometimes you might edit it for the length or for your in-house style and all that, but the story is already a story. And it's done all around the world. You go to New York and you might see one story in five papers. The Associated Press the other day hired me to do some work, and you see publish all over the place. The same video, the same pictures, all over the place. So why take that story and put it in artificial intelligence and pervert what the story is? Like for instance, you have a lot of experience covering court. If you say that the court has reserved a decision, it's different from saying the court has postponed a decision. No, reserve a decision. So I don't have a decision. When I have a decision, I'll let you know what my decision. If I postpone giving a decision, I have a decision, but I was gonna give it, but I ain't gonna give it today anymore. I give it at another date. And these might look like simple things, but they're not that simple. And we have a responsibility as journalists and as a media to inform, to educate and to entertain. And when we do something like that, we are misinforming the people. So, I mean, because journalism and mass communication is a profession for me, I might speak out about a lot of things that other people mightn't speak about. But when I do that, it's not because I have anything personal against anybody. It's because I am defending my profession. And a lot of the people who do these things, they will tell you up front, I ain't a journalist. I just want to eat a food. I want to make money. They tell you up front, I ain't no journalist. I just want to make money.
I would tell you, I remember the first workshop that we went together was Barbados media law workshop. And I remember I was like a few months into journalism. It was a few months or like a year. It was a few months. And I remember you got up and you spoke about citizen journalism.
Oh my.
And I was like, why does he feel so passionately about this? And it's not until like you really get into it, you be like, what kind of nonsense you telling me about citizen? And it shows. Someone had asked, I remember I was working at a media house and you made a post about the AI stuff. And the editor there asked me, what are you talking about? And I said, read the story and tell me what's different from that story from this story. And you and I never had no conversation about this. And they're like, I don't know what's the difference. Like, you cannot tell that this was written by ChatGTP or one of them, or rewritten. You can't tell that. And then, oh, no, you see it. I could see but it's obvious when you're looking, and it's obvious when you're trained that you will see certain things.
Yeah.
I definitely have to give you your flowers personally and professionally, because a lot of people like to point out negatives when they're negatives, but I see a lot of positive coming out of what you've done so far and what you will do. I know what you will do. And I'm curious, for people that are coming up, even if it's outside of communications or whatever, do you have anything that you like to say to them?
Well, what I would say to people, when your job is like a hobby, you will never work a day in your life. Find something that you love to do, something that you want to get up on mornings to do. Even if you have to go to study a little later in life, it makes no sense to go and study something and then you realize, oh, but I don't like this at all, and then you're miserable and what have you. Be committed to whatever you're doing. Make quality your hallmark. Sometimes I see young journalists, I plan to make a post about this. There is a place for immediacy, to take a picture and to post it or to go live. But there's also a place for quality, to have something that is, of a particular quality that would withstand time. Because journalism is the first draft of history. And 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, where's this thing that I broadcast? Like, if something happened in January and I said, let me just run and go live because I want to put it out now. But then in March, you want to do something from that same thing. I say, oh, shucks, boy, I don't have this. What I have is. So focus on quality. It's not just journalism, whatever you're doing, and make professionalism your standard. People, when they think of you, they must associate you with professionalism, with standard, with quality, with passion, and with all these things that are good and decent and desirable.
Yeah, then. This has been Off the Record with the man himself, Kenton Chance. Thanks for joining me, Kenton.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
Bless.